Hi, good morning. Good morning. Good evening, everybody. I make a motion to come out of executive session. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
A second.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Conley? He's not here. Dr. Kukunis?
Yes.
Miss Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Zahowski?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Okie dokie. So we're going into the superintendent's report. Christine, please.
Oh, Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag.
Oh, we gotta do the pledge. Do we have a flag?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all.
Dokie, we could move on now. Ms. Tona, superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Ms. Downs. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to report that we have completed 3 days of in-person instruction, and the students and staff were excited to see each other. Unfortunately, over the weekend, we received a report of 2 students who tested positive for COVID, and we wish these students well. All district protocols were followed, and we were in communication with the Suffolk County Department of Health. The cohort students in those classes, along with the teachers, are now in quarantine and working remotely from home through September 18th. We are still reviewing options for our Latin program and will communicate with families by Friday, September 11th. And this is the first board meeting of the month, so I'd like to report on residency and enrollment. First, regarding residency, during the month of August, we did not receive any reports of residency concerns. But if anyone has any concerns about residency, please be sure to either contact me, let me know. Mr. Schneider can be contacted, Ms. Mezzafaro, or the share it button on the website, or even email the Board of Ed at g.riverhead.net. All right, as for enrollment, I'm going to share my screen. Mr. Hines, can you allow me to share my screen? Okay, so this slide shows the June 26th enrollment versus today's enrollment. District-wide, there are 262 students less than we had in June on the last day of school. You can see here the charter school has an increase of enrollment of 62 students, and private and parochial schools have 130 more Riverhead students attending those schools. So across the district, we currently have 929 students enrolled in the full remote option. And I'll stop sharing. And to close, I would like to recognize all of our staff members who have been working incredibly hard to provide the safest environment for our students. I am so proud of the work that we are doing, and seeing students in classrooms has truly been the fruits of our labor. So we're very happy to be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tona. Do we have any questions in line for the agenda?
Yes, I'm going to want to call a vote on using reserves to fund sports, music, and clubs.
Can I have a motion? Sports, music, and clubs.
Chris, do you motion or do?
I'm just to add this onto the agenda, correct? This is not our discussion.
Add it on?
Yes.
Mr. Ventura, we add it on?
Yeah, could add it on. Mr. Dora, just be more specific. Are you talking about for the entire year or just for the fall season?
I have a plan, but to start with just the fall.
Okay.
So it's
And
full.
the plan I'll lay out in discussion of the agenda, the motion or the item.
So where do I add that, Mr. Venator, at the end?
Yes, I think you put it at the end after you finish all your other items.
Item L.
Okey dokey. So item L will be calling for fall sports, music, and clubs. Okay. So there's nothing online for agenda, right? The questions, Ms. Toner?
Consent agenda.
Not for agenda items.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we go to consent agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis?
Yes.
Ms. Healy?
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski?
Yes.
And myself is yes.
Ms. Downs, do I not get to vote?
We got Chris.
Oh, yeah, you're there. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Moore.
I abstain.
Okay.
I didn't get to vote on coming in out of exec either, so I don't know, you're forgetting about me tonight.
Oh, God. Okay, so we're, the agenda, old business, we got nothing on old business. And new business, award of a contract. The contract is for Da Vinci Education and Research, their educational behavior service. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Contract passes. Renewal of contract. This is for Out East Therapy, New York. It's a 1-year contract. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
and myself is also a yes. Motion passes, resolution passes. No award of solicited contracts. Could I have a, motion, please?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Approval of memorandum of agreement. This is for instruction of certain special education classes for the 2020-2021 school year. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr.
Comments or?
Oh, sure, you want to comment? I'm sorry, go right ahead.
I'm going to be voting against this proposal for the reason that this is for a virtual classroom, if I'm not mistaken. I don't believe we should have offered a virtual option. And if we did, it should have been capped, and we should have planned on how many virtual students we would have under the number of teachers that we have. We're in a contingency budget, and if we can't find money for other things, I don't think we have money for additional virtual teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. So that's an abstain?
No, that's a no.
That's a no. Mr. Wallace.
I'm going to be a yes, and the reason being is we're there to educate the children, whether they're in the school building or whether they opted to stay home. We gave them that option, so that's why I'm making a motion for or voting yes.
Thank you. Dr. Kukunis?
Yes, and I agree with Mr. Wallace. We do have family members who have parents or relatives that they live with that are immunocompromised, and this is their only option at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Kukunis. Ms. Healy?
Yes, and I was one of the first to say that I was happy that our district offered remote from the beginning. So I'm a yes.
Thank you. Mr. Howski?
Yes.
Thank you. And myself is a yes, and I also, there are a lot of families that have a lot of issues with this COVID, and this gave them the option. And I think it's only fair to make it that it's capped. I don't think it's fair to the children. I don't think it's fair to the families that feel that they don't want their children in the building. So the approval of memorandum passes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Downs? I'm sorry, a question just came to me. In the event that COVID creates a shutdown on the schools, how will this affect the virtual classroom? Like, how does this enhance it? This is a benefit to it in the event that happens?
If we're on full virtual, there's a strong possibility we won't need those additional teachers anymore, but we would need them for a short period of time while we restructure, because we would have to put everyone back into their original classrooms. And the same thing if we were to go back into full in person. We're planning for like a new first day of school, but we would need that transition time because there's a lot of behind the scenes re-cohorting into the student management system and getting everybody up to speed and in the right place. But the secondary schedules would remain the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, approval of employment agreement. This is these are for special ed classes. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr? Oh, comments?
Again, on the same thing, between these, I think 4 positions, we're up to like $370,000 between salary and benefits. Again, we're under contingency budget. I don't disagree that there are people that are affected by the COVID virus, but I also think we should have limited our virtual to just the ones who are affected. Again, I have to vote no for this.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. Mr. Wallace?
I'm going to be voting yes, just along the lines with the 4 teachers where Mr. Dorr said 370,000. That also includes 3 teachers assistants at 29,295 apiece for a total of 378,485. So I'm voting yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Dr. Kukunis?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Healy?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Zahowski?
Yes, but I have the same question. Does the same answer apply here, Ms. Tona?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, these are special agreements in order for us to meet the needs of the students during COVID.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And myself is also a yes. Approval of employment agreement passes. Approval of user fee. This is for
We got to do
Got
F.
F.
Letter F.
what?
Letter F. Approval of EBLA.
Oh, approval of EBLA. I can't wait to go real so everything could be in front of me all over the place. Okay, letter F, approval of EBLA. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. That will all pass it. Okay, approval of user fee. This is for Rascals. Any comments? Before I start, I need a motion.
Motion.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski.
I'm voting yes, but can you just explain exactly what that fee is and what it covers?
Ms. Toner, please.
Under the contingent budget, any outside organization needs to pay us a fee in order to use the facilities, and Rascals is an after-school activity that's run by an outside organization. So that's the fee that we're charging them under.
We're charging them $50 a week to use our facilities?
Correct.
Okay. And does the disinfecting and custodial cover that? How does that work?
They still have to clean those classrooms. They were used during the day as well. Mr. Schneider, anything to add to that?
The impact on our facilities, thank you, Ms. Toner. The impact on our facilities is minor. As Ms. Toner said, we're going to have to clean the classrooms from use anyway. Rascals is covering the costs of essentially heat, light, and water for the minimal impact they have. The timing of the program means that the budgetary impact to us is small, and so the user fee is minimal.
Okay, thank you.
And it provides aftercare for students after school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And you voted yes, Ms. Zahowski?
Yes.
Okay, and myself is a yes. So the approval of user fee passes. First reading of the revised board policy. This is the policy for public participation at board meetings. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
I just want to state the reason we're moving towards this, especially why we are under the COVID and the 6 feet spacing. It would keep the people from line when we go live meetings again. It would also help keep the people from coming up to the podium in a big line. If they submit their questions ahead of time, we can call them to the podium.
Thank you. Mr. Joy, how are you voting?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis?
Yes.
Ms. Healy?
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. The first reading of the revised board policy passes. Approval of NISBA annual convention. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
I have a comment. I'm going to be voting no for this. We are in a contingency budget. I don't see the need for us to spend $260 per attendee to do a virtual conference. I would have thought that even if we went to this conference during contingency budget, I would have voted not to go. Don't think it's necessary in these times. So that's a no.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wallace?
Actually, he makes a good point there, Mr. Dorr. So actually, I'm gonna vote no on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Kukunis?
I'm going to vote yes, only because we have a young board, and if they do want to take the opportunity for professional development, then I do think it should be available. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Ms. Healy?
I think he brings up a good point. No, if I wanted to pursue more, I would do it on my own time. I'd do it with my own funds also.
Okay, Ms. Zahowski?
I'm voting no for all said reasons.
Okay. And I'm voting yes, for the simple fact that this is pre-recorded. You don't have to be there every day. And we have a numerous amount of time to go in and at our leisure and take these courses. But the motion is no. So it didn't pass. Approval of changes to driver's ed program. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski.
I just have a question. Does this mean that it's unlimited to the amount of students that can enroll through the virtual if the parents are responsible for the driving hours? Because we usually cap once it sells out. So because it's a virtual option, I think that we should open it and not close anyone out, especially if the parents are responsible for the driving hours.
I don't think there's any reason to cap it. Mr. Schneider, you agree with that?
I think it can only be capped by session based on the number of students that can fit in the classroom instruction portion. But I think they're planning to run a number of compressed sessions. So I don't see any reason off the top of my head why they couldn't run as many sessions as is needed to accommodate the need. But if there's any changes, Ms. Toner, I can get back to you.
Ms. Zahowski, how do you vote now?
Well, I like the idea of the virtual and the parent responsibility of the driving, but I would want to make sure that as many students could. So Sam, I'm not sure how, I agree with the policy, but I'm just not sure how to vote.
Well, you're approving the changes because the whole structure of it is different. And we're going to attempt to schedule as many students that are interested in participating and take advantage of the opportunity.
Okay, is there a number right now that the classrooms are capped at that you know of, Sam?
I know that they're running at least 3 distinct sessions in the fall, possibly more if more kids sign up. I can speak with Brian Sachs, who administers the program, and let him know that there's interest to make sure that nobody is shut out of the program. So
Right.
If that's what you'd like.
Yes, I would ask that we make sure that no one gets turned away. So thank you. Yes, I agree with the policy.
Okay. And myself is yes.
Let me just add, we'll make sure that no Riverhead students get turned away. That's
Yes.
me. Okay. Sometimes we get calls from students in other districts, but you're referring to Riverhead students, correct?
Right, but, okay, yes,
Okay. I just want to make sure.
okay.
Thank you. Approval of changes of the driver's ed education program passes. Letter K, acceptance of donation. This is
Gloves and a mask.
This is 1,000 disposable gloves and 500 disposable masks from Lowe's of Riverhead. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis?
Yes.
Ms. Healy?
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski?
Yes,
And myself is a yes. accept the donation. Thank you so much, Lowe's. We really appreciate it. It's really needed. Letter L is what we added, and it's for the call for fall sports, music, and clubs. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any comments?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to hear his plan.
Go ahead.
I propose that this is funding for the fall sports, music, and clubs. I would like to see everybody 9 through 12 play on the varsity level. I believe that has been okayed by the athletic director. And then to have the middle school sports play amongst themselves where they would still get instruction and learn the game and be able to move on. For the following seasons, I would propose that we tell the community that they would have to raise half of the money and the school would come in for the second half. We would give them a date. If they don't meet the date, then we don't go forward. I'm trying to think of a fair way for everybody. And I believe if we ask the community for a date that they have to raise money for, that would be fair to everybody. Again, if we don't have these sports clubs and music, our students are at a disadvantage when they're applying to colleges because they're looking for extracurricular activities. We are denying these extracurricular activities this year. It's going to be a black mark on their college applications. Students are still in both music and the arts and sports vying for scholarships. We owe it to these children to provide them an opportunity for this. I think my plan is fair, and I would ask all board members to vote for it.
Thank you.
Ms.
Mr. Wallace.
Oh,
Just a question.
Yes.
Where would the money be coming from, Mr. Dorr?
From the reserves.
So with just hear me out now, Mrs. Downs. With a prediction of a 20% decrease, that's anywhere between $4 and $6.5 million. I believe that was in Mr. Schneider's last report that we got at the last meeting. And unassigned funds or unallocated funds, I believe we have 4.1. So that means we would probably be looking to empty those reserves for educational needs. We've already had an unforeseen spendage of $378,000 in 4 teachers, 3 teachers assistants. And we've already used 50% of the budget for cleaning supplies. And we're only in the first week of school, or first couple of days. So I believe that we're going to need some money. I don't think cutting into the reserves is such a good idea.
Well, we're only at that 5.7% if we stay at the 4% that is recommended by the law. If we put more than that in our unaccompanied fund balance for that purposes, we'd have more money there. We just found in the last couple meetings over $500,000 for teachers and purchasing agents. I think if we can find money for that, we can find money for our kids. Our kids are the reason we're here.
I agree with you 100%. And our teachers are the one who educate the children. So I think that's, education of the children is important. So to say that we don't need those extra teachers is out of line, I think, but
Excuse me, can we look at, like I said, we had 450 for the charter. It's the beginning of the school year. There was money on that line item, and some of it, where, Ms. Toner had used some of it. But if we maybe looked at the condensed high school clubs and music and just the JV fall and varsity fall, and not get new uniforms or equipment, that would bring the price tag down a little bit, and then we could think about things after we see the audit. It's a less than 380,000. It's might be in the 370s.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Not going into reserves.
Ms. Downs, if I may.
Ms. Dahowski had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
That's
okay.
okay. Go ahead, Rose.
That's what the Zoom meetings do. We're not able to interact.
It's very hard.
Yes, these Zoom meetings are very challenging. But one thing I don't want to lose sight of is the deadline for Section 11 tomorrow. So, Mr. Dorr, could you speak to that and how that affects if we don't vote it through tonight, just fall, and how that's going to affect the fall sports?
We asked Section 11 to hold off on printing or putting out their schedules. They wanted to put them out today, and we asked to have a day extension so we could vote on this tonight. If we don't pass this tonight, Section 11 is going to put out their schedules without Riverhead on them for the fall.
And just so that we're all clear, and maybe the community is clear as well, last meeting when I was trying to get something passed, we tabled it for the meeting after the audit, and that was to open up the discussion or vote for the reserves for all sports, music, and art at the varsity level. Correct? So this is only affecting, what we're discussing right now is only affecting the fall roster and anything music and art for the fall.
Music and art, those clubs are for a full year. The way it's contractually.
Okay, so that
it's a full year.
Great. Okay, so if we don't agree as a board to pass the vote tonight, then we're not if we vote no for this, then we're not going to be able to revisit arts and music at all, even after the audit?
No, if you revisit it after, there's just no change to the contractual amount. Mr. Schneider, would we be prorating that if we were to start later in the year?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Venator on that because I think that's a contractual issue that probably requires some negotiation.
Yeah, that would require a little bit of discussion with the RCFA. If you were to start, let's say, music and arts, if it wasn't for a full year, the stipends in the contract are based upon a full year. I would anticipate that the RCFA would be, if you would want to go in that direction, would be amenable to discussing some sort of proration. That has been my experience. There's no guarantee.
Thank you, Mr. Venator.
So,
Dr. Kukunis?
Well, hold on. I didn't actually vote. I just had a comment.
no,
And
no
I
one.
just-
We haven't voted yet, Matt.
Okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Dr. Kukunis?
No, I just wanted to piggyback on Virginia, what she was stating, that even if we don't get new uniforms or, we cut costs in some fashion, that we have additional costs this year with transportation. Instead of using one bus to take a team to a game, we now may need 2 to 3 buses due to the regulations now. So there's a lot of added costs as well that we never anticipated in the line items.
Mr. Venator, is it legal for parents to transport students to games?
It's an interesting question, Mr. Dorr. There is a regulation that says that to the extent that a district provides transportation to a game, we're required to provide transportation home from a game. The regulations are a little unclear as to whether or not a district can require parents to bring their kids, to and from a game. It's a little bit unclear. There's also, a question of, whether or not you want to entertain, your kids figuring out ways to get to games. It's a not only a legal issue, but it's a practical and a policy issue that you want to consider. I wish I had a more definitive answer for you on the legality of it, but I've researched this before, and I know the section strongly encourages districts, if they have competitions, to provide transportation for the students. I'm not aware of a particular regulation that says that you have to do it both ways, but if you provide it one way, you got to provide it both ways.
If I could just, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but in my experience with my student athletes, we had to, as parents, sign the day before a permission slip to release them to come home with us if we were taking them home from any activity that was sports related. So, and it was definitely part of a legal issue, safety and legal issue. So I'm not sure.
The same thing for if we were to bring them to the game also.
Right. So I don't know how that would work, because it's been in place, you know, for a long time. So I don't know how they would change that policy for us.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Dorr, you said that you would eliminate the middle school sports, and that's the years where the developmental stages of the learning really begins. Because you have a lot of kids that just join the sport at that age. Huh?
I did not say that. I said that the middle school would play amongst themselves. They would still get coaching and still learn the game. They would just not travel to other schools to compete. They would compete in scrimmages amongst themselves, similar to what Dr. Gakun has proposed earlier.
So what are you looking at as a savings if they just scrimmage among themselves rather than going to another school? Because official uniforms and facility rentals is $49,000 broken down among 3 seasons. So you're talking $15,000, you know, and it's the $102,000 still a cost because we're going to have to pay the coaches. So I don't know what number you're actually looking to save by eliminating middle school from playing other schools.
Anything I can to make sure that this happens.
Yeah, but what's the number? I mean, you have a plan. You drew it all out. What's the number we're looking at?
To include the middle school sports.
Anybody else? Okay, we're ready for a vote. Mr. Dorr.
Well, what are we exactly voting on? I mean, because I put
we're voting on fall sports, music, and clubs.
So.
And do you want to, Mr. Venator, do they need to say where the money's coming from? And exact dollar amount?
One of the concerns is I'm not sure if we know an exact or an approximate dollar amount. Sam, would you need that information tonight?
It would certainly be helpful for the resolution to have a dollar amount and language stating that you're choosing to take this from the unassigned fund balance, just so there's no guesswork here. We know exactly what you want.
So can we please take a minute to hash these numbers out, because this is very important, and we're under a deadline of 14 hours. So if we could really take a minute and not rush this through, I would really appreciate it.
So could we look at, because there is money issues, and then we somewhat prioritize, especially those as the kids in the high school, the high school clubs in music. I believe Christine had those reduced numbers. It was $58,590 for the high school clubs, $56,272 for the music, and then look at the JV fall and varsity fall, and figure out a third of the uniforms. I think it's less than 380, but it might be a little bit more because what Dr. Kokonis pointed out, if they ended up needing more buses. And that saves, because middle school sports, the middle school, and that's another $150,000. So as a compromise of some sort, that we're at least trying to get the dollar amount down so that we're not going too far into, if you're saying it's the unassigned. I think that's going to be around 5.7 million if we're doing it 4%. We have 5.7 million unassigned, I think, right? That looks like about the number. It's about the same as last year's.
Would it be helpful if Mr. Schneider puts up the information?
But first, I want to see whether or not does that sound good to you, Chris? I mean, you're the only, maybe you and Therese. I don't know if anybody else is looking to.
Yes.
Well, I think that we need to discuss it. I think we need to share the information with the community so that everyone is involved and not involved, but has a full understanding of what happened at this meeting tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So
Unfortunately, we don't have the time. We need to make a decision tonight. So,
Right.
yeah. So Ms. Tona, last week you had the chart that was pretty specific to cost per club, general club, sports per level, and then music in all the K through 12. I think you had that chart. So what's that?
I was just going to say, it's in last week's update.
Right.
That's what I'm looking at now.
Right.
I know.
But high school clubs, it breaks it down.
Did you put it on the screen by any chance so that the community can see it also, or no?
Yes, but I just need to take it out of the
Sure.
and put in a new one.
Thank you. I know. We have time.
Ms. Downs? I'm just going to say right now that any decision to spend any monies from the unassigned fund balance, I will not approve. I'm very uncomfortable of making any of these decisions. As said, the last meeting before we have our audit report, that was a decision of the board at our last meeting, and I don't make these decisions hasty, and that's how I stand.
Thank you, Dr. Kukunis. I'm on the same page with you.
Yep. I mean, if we, Ms. Downs.
Excuse me, Mr. Wallace.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm on the same page with Dr. Kukunis. We took a vote and we should stand to it. We set a date when we're supposed to discuss this, and I don't want to take any money out of.
There's been new circumstances since we made that vote.
Correct.
Our financial circumstances are still the same.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so what's happening? What are we gonna do? What are we doing?
We're looking at the chart that you wanted to see.
Right.
So the top chart shows, and it's probably not big enough. Let me see if I can make it bigger.
And then, Mr. Venator, while we're doing this, could you just reiterate what it is that we would be voting on?
What would you be voting on? You would be voting on a motion to amend your contingency budget to fund fall sports, music, and your art programs in an approximate amount of X through utilization of the unassigned fund balance. And the question is, what is that X? I don't know that it has to be an exact number. You can have an approximation. You can always change it later on, but you need some sort of approximate number. So that's essentially the motion: to amend the budget to fund fall sports, music, and art programs through utilization of the unassigned fund balance. We just have to come up with an approximate number.
Can you scroll down just a little bit so we get high school? I can see what the high school music cost is. Thank you.
On what balance, Chris?
Sam, it's the unassigned fund balance. Is that correct?
That's the only one available. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want Mr. Schneider to put up the chart from last week where he was able to manipulate the numbers at the same time and keep a running total?
That'd be great.
Do you have that, Sam?
I have that. You just have to unshare your screen and I'll put that one back up.
And Mr. Schneider, why can it not be from a line item that hasn't been fully spent this year?
You can do that, but the problem is that you run the risk that the general fund budget will go bankrupt if we need the extra money for whatever reason.
So for that 370,000 will make us go bankrupt.
The 370,000 that we're going to need to hire the staff that you approved this evening is going to be piecemealed out of the existing budget lines from places that is not currently encumbered. I know coming up next month, a number of teachers are slated to move columns in the salary schedule because of credits that they've received under the teacher's contract. Again, that's going to be funded from unencumbered lines in the budget.
Well, wouldn't that be from something that you planned already in your under that line item for teachers' salaries? That would have been something that you planned in that line.
I certainly did plan that, but I did not plan.
So I'm talking about with the charter money.
I would strongly recommend the board not use any additional funds from the existing budget because of two important reasons. The first is I am very concerned that we're going to go bankrupt this year because you will have spent more money than you have available. And my second concern is that you will not be able to make the appropriated fund balance that you need to offset next year's taxes. And it will have a very devastating implication in next year's budget. But again, it's your budget, it's your money. I can just give you the recommendation.
It's not our money, it's the public's money.
So I'm looking at these numbers, and the middle school numbers, they're 102,000 for the fall. But if there's no transportation or anything like that in that, so that should be less. There would be no JV sports. Everybody would be playing on the varsity level. So with all the clubs except for elementary clubs and the music, I'm coming at like 347,000 for the fall.
Why would there be no transportation for middle school?
Because under my plan that I just put out, they were just playing amongst themselves.
What's the sense if they're not going to be playing competitive against other teams?
They're learning the game and they're playing a competitive scrimmage against themselves.
You know as well as I do that that's not really the best thing for the development of the children.
Well, the best thing is to have fully funded sports, but our community...
Yeah, that'd be great, but unfortunately the budget failed.
Us to find a way to do it.
Right. So
but also with middle school sports, if they're staying after school, we have to offer, what is it, the 4 o'clock bus, is it? 5 o'clock?
Okay, so take middle school out since it's...
Absolutely not.
I'm not playing a la carte over here.
So
well, you are. You are.
Basically no way that you would come to any sort of compromise on this.
No.
If you're going to pull middle school out, absolutely not.
No, I can't.
I'm not voting to pull anything from the budget.
I came with middle school sports, but there's no compromise for you at all. You're just going to tell our students that this year they can't have any clubs, they can't have any sports, they can't have any music. You're saying that to the kids, Matt.
No, Mr. Dorr, the taxpayer said that to the children when they voted no.
Right.
So, you know what? We are charged with taking care of the taxpayers' dollars and educating the children. You keep on saying the whole child, but yet you want to cut the middle school out because they could just play among themselves. Come on, you know as well as I do they need to play against other teams.
And I also know the countless emails from our students, our parents, even some teachers asking that we have sports and art and music for our kids.
You know, I was coming into tonight almost going to vote yes for the fall sports, but realizing that the money's going to have to come from the reserves, I made the motion last time that we tabled that last time. So I will not vote to pull money from reserves. If we found the money elsewhere, then fine. But if we can't find it, then I'm voting no if it's coming from reserves.
We should learn from school districts that live beyond their means. Eastport South Manor lived beyond their means. They had to cut out 70 faculty members.
They were under a stress warning for years, and they did not plan with the tax cap. I mean, I agree with you, Dr. Kokonis, but I'm just saying that, you know, in their situation, that was a number of years of being, a district that was cited to be under stress, and that wasn't meeting. Cutting enrollment was down and not addressing the amount of teachers they had towards enrollment, and they just kept taking it down from reserves and taking down from reserves.
When they combined the schools, they kept every single teacher. It didn't
Exactly.
matter if it was needed or not. They had teachers that would come in and teach one class.
Full due respect.
Full-time salary. That's why they removed all those teachers.
I would please ask to ask the president if you could speak. I can't see anybody. All I have is this form in front of me, and I'd like to make a comment. There are school districts today that just because of COVID and not being on contingency on top of that, that had to release teachers and let go of staff. There are numerous schools that have to do that. And that's just with the COVID. And I do not want to get rid of any staff. I want to make sure our children are educated. They need reading, writing, arithmetic. And I am not going to take anything out of the reserves to support any of this. I am fearful of using the reserves. I do not like when I hear that we could possibly bankrupt ourselves. We are supposed to be fiscally responsible and work with this money. This is not our money. This is the taxpayers' money. And we have to do the best that we can with what we got. And that when it comes to me, I'm voting no if we're taking out of reserves.
Ms. Downs, you are absolutely correct. And I believe it was Bayshore that had almost 60 teachers laid off, and Rochester had 109 because of COVID.
Pug even lost teachers too.
We're not done.
And Copeg, I know because of the budget cuts, they were laying off teachers as well. So laying off teachers cuts into education. I'm not going to vote for anything that's going to do that.
Sports, arts, and music cuts out of education of the children.
Copeg was another district that was on the stress list by the comptroller for a number of years also, and gets 48.6% of their state, of their budget from state aid. So just, we have to, we can't complain, it's apples to oranges here. I'm not looking to go into reserves. I just wanted to look at the charter line there. Now it's 450 students. There's still money there. And I was just looking to do something for the high school students, not looking to go into reserves.
Ms. Downs, if I could say something. So everything that we're all saying is obviously true. I think the discussion tonight came upon us quite abruptly because of the deadline tomorrow for Section 11 and the requirements from them to our high school regarding roster and ability to play. We did decide last week that we were going to table it until we got the audit report and then have the discussion and a fair vote at the following meeting. And now we're at a different time in our situation. So Sam, is there any money anywhere outside of the reserve that we could use once we go through this chart to see what we can take out? And, I want to keep middle school, and if every JV can play varsity, that would be great. However we could keep a program, I think we should encourage it amongst each other. And so Sam, could you maybe complete what we were asking before to show us what it would actually cost, and an option outside of the reserve where this money can come from? Because Ms. Healy, if I'm understanding correctly, are you saying that there's...
Well, when I run the numbers for the charter line, and that's where I'm just looking at, and it's 450 students times 17,771, you get like 8 million, and we already spent 250,000 of it. So, I mean, there's money there. Plus, we didn't spend 57,000 from the last time.
I'm sorry, it's not clear. How much? Someone, whoever has the dog, could you silence your phone just for a minute?
So, Ms. Healy, could you give me?
I was just looking at the charter line. That's the only thing that has always been zeroed out every year,
right.
on the line item. And so that, you know, and give or take the students, and I was just using those numbers and just seeing if, you know, we could just do something with that for some of the fall sports.
Right. And what was the amount? I'm just, if you could clarify the amount that you're saying.
Well, if you run right now, we have 450 students that are enrolled, and I don't know if any more are going to be enrolled, but the tuition is $17,771 a student. So you have to multiply that, you know, by the 450. Right now, that's around 8 million. It's $7,999,650. And then you take that from the line item that was budgeted, which is 8,793,000 plus something. And then we already had earmarked 250,000 the first time around to keep some of the teachers. And then we have 57,778 or so left over because we didn't spend all that money. So there's some, it's not even going into reserves. It's just something to at least maybe get those high school clubs, high school music, at least for the high school students. We're not going to be able to, you know, that's the compromise. You know, we're in a contingent budget, and that's something that's got to give. So maybe my concern is just the mental health, and I've had professionals even talking to me about this just to give them a sense of hope. Our teenagers, that's what I'm looking at. I don't think that the money's going to be there for the middle school. I have middle schoolers. They're going to have to be doing something else. I don't even have, you know, I'm just looking out for those kids that can't afford the travel teams or anything else. That's what I'm looking out for. That's why I kind of changed my mind on this, is that no one is looking out for the kids, that this is all they have.
Right.
All they have. And like I said, I'm not looking to go into reserves, just into that one line.
So based on what you looked at, what is the total amount available on that one line that we would have for this? Approximately.
Well, there's definitely over 300. There's definitely over 380,000 or so with that. When I was told it up.
Well, at least 300. Do you think
more than that? But like I'm saying, I'm trying to be conservative.
Sure.
If I was to run the numbers quickly. But I was just thinking if we could do the JV and varsity. He's saying you can combine them. But if you just looked at the JV varsity and high school clubs and high school music.
Right. So assuming that we have, I'm going to be conservative too, 400,000. Okay, Sam, Mr. Schneider, is there any way you?
Not even that. You won't even need that, I don't think. But
okay. Well, let's just assume that we have in excess of 400,000. So, Mr. Schneider,
for a minute.
Okay.
If you don't mind, and Ms. Healy, I very much appreciate your look at the numbers, but I just want to make sure we're not counting the same dollars twice. My calculations show that we would have a spare $284,000 in the charter school line. Well, tonight we hired teachers for $300,000+. That's where I was going to pay for it from. If you want me to find a different place to pay for it, I can look, but we're running out of places in this budget where we have contingency money. And I don't mean contingency budget money, I mean contingency for unplanned expenses. We have to end this budget with $1.6 million unspent, or we will not be able to make the appropriated fund balance in next year's taxes, which is why I want to, again, caution you to be very careful about what you spend. And I certainly understand the inclination to go into the budget and say, okay, what's not encumbered, we could take from that, but that's how you're going to spend through your appropriated fund balance, and you're going to have a disastrous financial implication next year. I can go to this chart and take out whatever you'd like.
Mr. Schneider, just to back up a minute.
Yes.
So you're saying we had 284,000 that you calculated out of the charter school, and of that 284, you were using 375 to hire the new teachers and teachers aides?
I was going to take the money from the charter school that's left over, plus contingent money that we have in the teacher's salary line for anticipated but not hired teachers. There's about 150,000 in the budget for that. And that's how I was going to pay for it. Now, if the board wants something else, I can look back at something else, but I just want to be very careful that you're not counting the same dollars in two different spots. And that's my worry here.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes, sir.
if I may, can you explain what the long-term effect of us pulling from the reserves would be, to the taxpayers in the years to come? If you can give a little explanation in that. I know the auditor tried to do it at the last meeting, but I don't know if everybody was listening to really what she was saying on how it would take years to recover.
I think of reserves as I would think of a savings account that you would have in your own household. If you spend every year from your savings account in order to meet your household operating expenses, you will soon run out of money. So if you spend from the reserve, from your savings account as part of your operating expense year after year, you will be broke. If you spend from the reserve very judiciously and very occasionally, then you'll be okay. The danger that we have here is that the voters have said we cannot increase the levy this year. That's the net effect of the failed budget, is you have to stay with the same levy. So in other words, in next year's budget, if we use the reserve in this year's budget as a revenue source, we now have to use it next year again, or we have to increase the levy to make up for that difference. Now, the problem with that is you cannot increase the levy very much every year because of the property tax cap. That's essentially the point. If we use the reserve this year as a revenue source, we're going to have to use it next year, where the money is going to have to come from somewhere else, and we don't have anywhere else.
And
Sam?
Thank you.
What you're saying, Sam, is if we next year, if we use our reserves this year, next year we will have to definitely go over the cap.
Okay, that is one option. The other option is that you have to make cuts in next year's budget in order to make up that difference. If you use the reserves as a revenue source this year, you have to find where you're going to get that revenue source for next year. If you're not going to use the reserves again, the only other place to go is the levy. But you cannot increase the levy to keep up with that use, because you cannot increase the levy fast enough unless you're willing to pierce the cap. Exactly as you say, Mrs. Downs.
Thank you.
Obviously,
Stan, our contingency budget is larger than last year's budget, correct?
by $200,000, yes.
And last year we were able to fund all of this, correct?
Yes, but people.
So now we have more money than we had last year. Why can't we fund everything?
Because everything costs more money this year than it did last year.
The sports is costing more money than it did last year?
People got raises, things got more expensive, and you didn't increase the levy. The levy is the same. So your expenses went up and your major source of revenue stayed flat.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Could I just confirm something? Okay.
Sure.
So last week, I felt like I was drowning trying to save sports, music, and arts. And I thought I was clear with the question as to where we could find some money, any money, just to start to get an idea of what extra, which I know we don't have extra, so I use that term lightly, but what extra money we had that we could maybe save something. And nobody came up with, Sam, you didn't mention a word of this about, oh, maybe you did, I'm sorry, I'm not even gonna say that, but so suddenly today, we found
$375,000, 284 of which could have potentially funded, without going into the reserves, some of the programs that Mr. Dorr and I are really fighting for our life, but not our life, the students' life, to save the programs. And I know there's a mixed view on the board. I know there's a mixed view in the community. I know there's a mixed view with all involved. But, you know, how does that happen now? I get the need for teachers. I am in full support. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, anyone. But, you know, we had $284,000 last week that could have funded something that we were asking for. And it wasn't that easily provided as it was tonight to support the hiring of the other teachers and the teachers' aides. So, you know, I'm saying this, wait, I just want to say this. And I love Riverhead. I have volunteered a tremendous amount of time, so this is not anything, I don't want to be misunderstood. But we found money to hire teachers. I understand why, but we couldn't find money for the individuals, the athletes, the musicians, the theater students who live in our community, who are exactly why all of the teachers work here, all of the coaches coach here, all of you work here, all of us volunteer our time. We couldn't find it. We couldn't find it. But now we can. For something different.
Ms. Downs, if I may.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Kukunis.
I know whenever we talk about the charter school line, people are saying that they found money. It's not found money. That's anticipation for tuition towards a charter school for our students that live in our area. We have no control over the charter school. So we put the line item there anticipating the cost. It costs us more money to educate a child at the charter school than here on our campus. So it's not found money because still we don't know, or we may anticipate more tuition, a tuition bill coming from them. Now, yes, as of now, it looks like we have extra money in that line item. And we're using it, we're like, okay, let's use that for now to pay for the teachers that we just hired. But if the charter school comes around and says, guess what, you owe us for 10 more students, we're gonna have to take that money now out of another line item.
Well, thank you for that explanation.
I'd like to say something here. The fact of the matter is, we were told that we would have to hire some new staff. We were told that. It didn't just come out of the air. And common sense would make it that it's going to come out of our budget. People are saying there's padding, there's extra money. That extra money that everyone calls it is there for a reason. And we already knew that we were going to need staff. And that's exactly what happened. It's being used for staff. It's nothing against, it wasn't held back or secret. Everyone knew there was money there, and they also knew that there was going to be staff. And personally, I'm happy that that money was there for staff. So, I mean, we need it. We need these, a lot of children are on virtual, and we don't know, there might be more added to virtual. I mean, what do we do if another classroom gets shut down, or if a whole school gets shut down? What do? We have to have these staff members. So
less than.
Why would you need less?
Because the teachers that are teaching in those buildings would now teach the full class virtually to all their students, not 5 students a day.
Right, and that was the question that I posed earlier to Ms. Tona about the temporary hiring of those, how many, 4 positions plus 6 positions that we just agreed to. That was the question.
Yeah, the dollar amount that was on that's involved with those agenda items tonight, that's a maximum amount. If things in the world of COVID change at some point where we don't need those individuals any longer because we're coming back in full in person, or we go to full remote and we have to restructure all of our classrooms again, then we may not need all of those positions, but it's an unknown. And we don't know how long we're going to be in this hybrid model of instruction.
All I know is last year when we had parents standing in front of us complaining about large class sizes, we had no money to hire extra teachers. This year in a contingency budget, we have money to hire more teachers. I just don't understand it. Why, when we had large class sizes, we couldn't hire additional teachers.
I believe we didn't have the space.
We didn't have the space to put those teachers.
It wasn't the teachers, it was the space to put them.
And it comes down to wants and needs sometimes, where certain things are at contractual limits. And yes, it would be wonderful to have smaller class sizes, but we're still at contractual limits. And we need to be prudent with the money that's in those lines for the reasons that Mr. Schneider outlined before, that any given year, we already pull from reserves every year to help fund the budget. That's something that we always do. So we need to have a certain amount of money left over in any given year's budget in order to perpetuate the use of excess funds each year.
Now we can pull from other reserves, any reserve that we have, we can pull from that for COVID costs. So wouldn't hiring these additional teachers be a COVID cost? We wouldn't have had to hire them if it wasn't for COVID. So we could pull from any one of our reserves to pay for this. Is that correct, Sam?
In theory, yes, but that has to be repaid with interest. And the financial plan that we've long talked about here is that the reserves are going to be used to fund our budget this year when the state aid collapses. So if you go into those reserves, you're going to, again, spend the same dollar twice. The wind-up point that I wanted to make here is the only pathway forward that I see for you here is to take the money from unassigned fund balance. Because my biggest concern about using quote unquote found money from the budget, and that's a phrase I really don't like, is that we're going to need that money. And we're going to need to make appropriated fund balance at the end of the year. I think that deserves a little bit of mention. Our levy is at a certain number. The appropriate fund balance completes that levy, right? It's money that we collect this year that we don't spend, and it's used next year to offset the levy. If you don't end the budget, don't end the year with at least $1.6 million of unspent money, we will not make our appropriate fund balance, and we will have a budget gap next year. The only pathway that I see forward here for you is using unassigned fund balance. But again, there's some pretty severe dangers in that. That to me is your only way forward, and it's not a way forward I recommend, but you are permitted to do it if you want.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace, you wanted the floor?
You muted.
Mr. Wallace, you wanted
Okay, I got you. Yes, thank you. I was muted. I mean, we're into the first week of school, and we're already 50% of the custodial supplies used within the first week. I mean, we're going to take a big hit with the COVID and cleaning supplies and PPE and all that other stuff.
But we're also getting close to
So, I mean, definitely, we should be getting it.
We are getting
Doesn't
it.
mean we're going to get it.
The monies from the CARES Act were promised revenues when we made the budget last spring that was originally up for vote. We had reductions already in aid, and the state promised that the CARES Act funds were going to make up the difference for what was being cut. And so that money was already allocated as revenue. Mr. Schneider, do you want to embellish on that?
The board will recall exactly as you said, Ms. Tono, when the state aid runs came out last year, there was something I think the state called it pandemic reduction which was a certain amount of money. And then there was something I think called federal restoration, which is the exact same amount of money. That is the CARES Act. It's not new money. It's not anything other than what we already planned on back in the spring. The state has just dressed it up with an application procedure to access the money.
And put limitations on what it can be spent for.
Correct.
Anybody else? Okay, with that, ready to take a vote? We're voting on.
Wait, sorry, I was muted. I just want to say something. So the no vote to the budget was a challenge to the district to do better. And this board can use this challenge and rise to it. Being penny wise and pound foolish with the students' mental health is a little unbelievable in my opinion. Staff is an investment in students, in their minds, and the extras, which we're discussing tonight, the sports, the music, and the arts, is an investment in their mind, body, and soul. And in my opinion, that is what's needed more than ever at this time.
I am scared of what's going to happen if they don't have these options, that we're going to see crime increase in town. We might see teen pregnancy increase in town. We're going to have kids who have no outlet. We'll have our dropout rate go up because kids, the only reason they were coming to school, some kids, were for sports, music, and the arts. Their grades will suffer. Some kids only did well in classes because they had to do well in order to participate in these activities. We have an obligation to these kids. We have an obligation for these kids' future. They need these activities. I'm begging you to think about, and I know we're not supposed to think about our own children, but think about your own children. Now, instead of participating in these things, they're coming home and getting on a video game or sitting in front of the TV and not participating in these sports that they love. Again, I'm just begging you to do what's right for these kids.
Thank you, Mr. Dewar. Anybody else? Okay, so on the floor, we have an amended budget to take on all sports, music, and clubs we've got an approximate number. We don't even have a number from unassigned fund balance. Mr. Dorr.
Yes.
Mr. Wallace.
No.
Dr. Kukunis.
No, and I have more confidence that our students will go above and beyond this year with their academics.
Ms. Healy.
You're saying you're all voting for all elementary clubs, elementary music? That was all included in there? You weren't?
Ms. DeVenator, could you state, or Lori, Madam President, could you state again what we're voting on, please?
She's saying all middle school JV, varsity, all high school clubs.
For the fall.
Oh,
the fall.
F-A-L-L.
I know. Okay, so but is that including all the high school clubs, middle school club, elementary clubs, high school music, middle school music, elementary music? You're not looking to pull out the. So is that what we're voting on? Is all of it? Not even looking to compromise, take some money out of the elementary or music and clubs?
Miss Healy, I'd be willing to compromise, but it sounds like there's other people on this board that don't want to come up with a compromise.
Yeah, I was looking to compromise too, but we kind of went over, we didn't go over any numbers and we didn't take things out to see what it would cost. So it's to a vote now, Ms. Healy.
All due respect, we just sat here and spoke for a very long time on this subject, and nobody asked to have those numbers all pulled out and rearranged.
I did. Why do you think the chart is on the screen?
I put up numbers. I've said my numbers.
You said that nobody asked to take out elementary.
I did. Ms. Downs, I'm terribly sorry, but the reason the screen looks like it does right now is because about a half an hour ago, I asked Mr. Schneider if we could start taking numbers out, and Ms. Tona even reiterated that that's what we were looking to do, and conversation took over, and now we're to a vote. So the initial conversation and why the screen is up is because of a question that I asked to please could we start subtracting to see what number we actually needed to keep something.
Okay,
right, and I had asked for the high school clubs and high school music, and I said, can we look at those numbers, as well as I think Mr. Dorr was talking about combining the JV with the varsity and the middle school.
I think the conversation took a different direction.
Yes.
If you want, we could go back and you could ask.
If that's something that Mr. Dorr would compromise on.
We're in the middle of the vote. Mr. Venator, what do I do here?
So it sounds like why don't we do this? I think Mr. Dorr initially proposed a motion to fund fall sports, music, and arts. And we talked about through utilization of unassigned fund balance. And if we have a number, if we can have a number that was associated with Mr. Dorr's proposed motion, we can then vote on that. If there's a second motion that would have a lesser number that excluded certain things, then you can have a second vote for a lesser number. So, Mr. Dorr, based on the chart that we have in front of us, do you have a particular amount that you want to make to move to amend the budget to fund these items? And if you might need some help from Mr. Snyder.
Just tell me what you want to take out and I will delete it or reduce it however you want. Keep in mind though, these numbers do not include the 3:15, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock buses. This is strictly the cost of running the sports. So just tell me what you want me to reduce and I can do that.
And Mr. Snyder, the clubs and music, is this based upon a full year?
Yes. As we said earlier, if it's going to be a prorated portion of the year, Mr. Venator, I think that some negotiation has to take place. Right. And then in terms of the eliminating JV and having everybody play varsity, I would just caution the board that at some point there's going to be a certain number of students in a sport that they're going to need additional adult supervision at. So I would just urge caution in eliminating this entire JV line item without being cognizant of the fact that you may need to hire additional people in the varsity level in order to staff the event properly. So I can remove the winter and spring right now if you'd like.
I just want to look at fall.
Yeah, just fall.
Okay, hang on a second.
I'm just going to throw something out there while we're waiting for Mr. Schneider. So you think it's a good idea for a 9th grader to be on the same football field as a 12th grader?
It's done in other parts of the state.
So you think it's a good idea for these 9th graders that will probably never see the field except for practice?
Well, I don't know. We've lost a lot of kids because they don't have sports, music, or clubs. They've gone to either parochial schools that have them or surrounding districts that have them. We've lost around 200 kids, plus the coaches that we're going to lose if we don't do this.
All right, my computer just froze there. All right, let's take that out. If you're just going to run sports, let's just for argument's sake, we'll say this is roughly a third each. So just give me a second, okay? make sure we get this right. All right.
And then, this, Sam, could you then take the chart above it and also do a third? Because that'll be, would it be roughly a third?
That's
I
going to
think it's
make
for the whole
this
year.
Mr. Venator, are you sure that's?
I'm just, it's based on assumption that will be up, you know.
Well,
I mean,
okay.
It's Mr. Doer's motion, however he wants to do it. I'm just giving possible options.
Okay. I mean, you have the option here. I think what Mrs. Healy was talking about was we had a proposal several weeks ago whereby we would, for lack of a better word, arbitrarily reduce the expenditures for high school and middle school clubs to a certain amount. And essentially, the administration would have to cherry pick the clubs in order to make it fit into whatever amount of money the board felt comfortable appropriating. So I can certainly divide this by a third, although I don't know that that's going to be the methodology that may functionally make the most sense. You may want to instead just say, all right, so we're at 679 now, right? If you say, and I'm making this number up, we do not want this number to be above 500,000. Okay, just for argument's sake, then you could go in here, get rid of this, get rid of the elementary level clubs, and then you could say cut 127,000 out of the remaining clubs and music so that that number is not higher than 500,000. But that's going to take a knife through the program in kind of a in a financially arbitrary way.
Now, again, Sam, if the middle school just played amongst themselves and did not travel, so there would be no transportation, no officials, or anything like that, that number would be?
This number is largely based on staff. The cost of busing students to games is very minimal. It's minimal here because it's not part of this calculation. It's a de minimis cost. The real cost is the 5 o'clock buses. So if you are saying that the middle school is just going to essentially intra-squad scrimmage, obviously we could get rid of this. And you're really not going to bring this number down all that much. Maybe $10,000 is about all you're going to get out of it, because you may not need people who chaperone games in other schools when there's only one coach involved. The cost of busing the kids to the games is tiny.
Okay.
So then that concern that was brought up before about needing extra buses, that we shouldn't be as concerned about.
I'm not going to stand in your way on that.
Yeah, that would be the case for varsity and anyone who would be competing outside of the district is transportation costs.
Yeah, our busing to games is, we normally take care of that ourselves as much as possible with our existing staff. There is money already in the budget for some transportation overtime because things come up. So I'm not as particularly worried about that.
And you're saying the 81,000 for sport, for the JV sports is all staffing?
Yeah, that's the bulk of it. But again, I just want to be cautious here that if you were to say everyone's going to play at varsity, and far be it from me to know whether that is possible for every student, you're going to need to hire extra coaches on the varsity level to accommodate the increased size of the team, because it's going to be too much for the varsity coaches to handle, unless you're going to have pretty severe tryouts and cuts.
Right. So could our JV coaches step up and become co-coaches with the varsity then? If And what is the tryout? Can you talk about that? Because we've never, well, not never, I'm not, but is that something that we've done with our sports tryouts?
Oh yeah, every sport tries out. It's some sports have cuts and some sports don't.
Well, that's what I mean, like cuts.
So here you want to take away the JV level, put them up in varsity. And here, like I said before, are they ever going to see the field if you're saying there's tryouts, but no cuts? So let's just put 40 kids on the sideline because they're never going to see the field. But that's good for their morale, you know?
Matt, I'm trying to come up with a
Yeah,
compromise.
we're just trying to compromise. Like,
Yes, I understand, but you know,
come up with a
you're looking
compromise
to
for us?
not have competitive sports for the middle school. You want them just to play among themselves. I mean, come on.
Well, that's
And then,
I think
hold on. I still have the floor. I just want to say one other thing. So here you want to fully fund fall sports, but then for the winter and the spring, you're saying your plan is that the public needs to fund them. I was
asking the community to fund half of it, and we would fund the other
half. What
half.
happens if they couldn't?
Then they wouldn't have a winter or a spring sport.
I don't think that's right to fund one and not the others.
Yeah, I'm not agreeing to that.
But the thing is, we don't have time.
Yeah.
To have them fundraise by tomorrow.
We're just trying to figure out how to get fall sports.
Just trying to come up with a compromise, Matt. And I wish you would work with us instead of being against us and come up with a way that we can do something good for these kids.
Chris, I am working with you. There was talk of fundraising all along since the budget failed. Do we know how much money was raised for sports or theater or anything?
I don't, because as a board member, I can't be involved in that.
I understand, but there was all these different talks and everything else, and there's nobody that approached the board and said, listen, I was able to raise $50,000, or I was able to raise $75,000 to help offset the cost. You know, I'm sad. I have an 11th grader that's not going to play. I have an 8th grader that's not going to play.
But we can give them an opportunity to, if you would.
Yeah, but to allow my children, my children or the other children to play this year in the district, it's going to put a financial strain on the taxpayers for the upcoming years. And that's what Mr. Schneider's been saying. That's what the auditor had said. This is why we pay these people to advise us. None of us are financial CPAs or anything else on this board. That's why we have people to do it.
Just referring to the RCFA contract, Mr. Venator, the talk of having additional coaches at the varsity level, having essentially the JV coaches slide up. I read the contract in a fast read here that would actually cost us more money because they're paid, varsity level coaches are paid at a higher level.
Is there?
Well, there would be assistant coaches. So how does a varsity assistant coach compare to a JV coach?
Actually, a head JV is paid the same as a varsity assistant. So it might wash out, but I just want to bring that to you.
Okay.
So maybe there's a way the coaches would work with.
And maybe there would be volunteer coaches like there is on the football team. The football team, I believe, only has 2 coaches paid. The rest are all volunteered, and there's a staff of like 10.
I don't know. So,
well, you know, I just know that I'm comfortable doing the JV and varsity. It's going to get to be too much money with the middle school. And I know that with my numbers, I was more comfortable with the reduced high school clubs and music. Like I said, I would love to be able to do everything for everybody, but was just looking out for those kids at this point, the vulnerable teenagers.
Mrs. Healy, would you like me to put those numbers on the screen here in this chart?
Yeah, well, if you'd like, I don't want to take up more time. But I had 58,590 for the high school clubs and 56,272. Yeah, the music number was the same.
Give me the high school clubs number again. I'm sorry.
58,590, and I think Ms. Tona said that. Yeah, 590. You know, from there we would again, it would be picking and choosing. Not everyone's going to have their club. But, you know.
And then the reduced middle school, if we were looking at that, would be 29,295. That was what we talked about.
Right, but I wasn't looking at that. I was just being realistic. I was just, you know, if you had to prioritize, not saying that middle school students don't have their needs and so forth, but just thinking of the this more so the students that have nothing for after school. They don't have the means for travel teams or anything else, or clubs, or the ones that really need those ensembles and things, that the music that means a lot to them. Just like I said, they're not going to have high school again, or the younger kids. The future might be much different for them. So I was just looking over the next year, you know, if you had prioritized. There's children last year that missed out on a whole lot in a couple of months because of the COVID, and then this year. And again, like I said, we don't know what it's going to, then a couple of months are going to hold, but if things go better, then there's something there for them.
All right, so that's what the numbers look like then, removing the middle school sports and chopping down the high school and the middle school clubs.
Sam, there's still the middle school total, which is adding into the total, I think.
You're right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, what number? On the top you have, what do you have there? 58. So take out the clubs. So it just should be high school clubs, 58, 590, and high school music, 56,272.
So take out the middle school clubs entirely?
Yes, I like I said, it's
and should I take out the middle school music as well?
Right. Just because of, you know, everything costs money, and we maybe could relook at it after the audit, but just for now.
I can agree to this compromise.
Because this is now under 380,000. And it's, I think, being more prudent and wise about our budget, and we're not going to go into the unassigned fund balance as much.
As much? So where is the money coming from?
Well, I guess Mr. Schneider said we can't look to the charter money, but it will have to come from the unassigned fund balance.
So, Mr. Doyle, you said you can agree to the compromise. Hello?
Yeah, I've been trying to compromise all night.
But your original thing was to say varsity sports only. So this is really not a compromise to you. This is actually a gain for you, because now JV's back in it. So I mean, unless there's everything included, and I'm not making any motion or to pull anything from reserves. Absolutely not.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the number that's on the screen, Sam, but we were looking also to find a way to find that money somewhere else, not coming out of reserves.
I don't think you have any viable pathway forward in that regard, particularly if you want to make that decision tonight. It is way too early in the budget calendar for me to say that you have $379,000 that won't be needed in the budget. I think we've already had to hit our contingency lines in the budget for a lot of unanticipated, if we could call it, expenses. I think your only viable pathway forward, if you wanted to make this decision tonight, is from the unassigned fund balance. And again, it's not a pathway that, you know, I can financially recommend to you, but I think it is your only pathway.
My head is spinning, so I just want to confirm before I vote that so we would be keeping high school clubs
high school music, JV sports, and varsity sports for the fall.
And the high school clubs would be at a reduced number of clubs, unless we find out that we can do a prorated amount.
Okay. And the coaches all stay the same, but with
Yeah.
the JV. Okay.
The only issue that I foresee is with football and volleyball in the fall. Right now, the state is saying that they can only practice, and if they were to have competitions, that'll be later in the year. So those sports, we would have to have additional stipends for those coaches if they go beyond the fall season. But we don't know what that looks like yet. And then the only other issue to think about, clubs could be virtual, but music rehearsals and athletics, when we have all the students that are on full remote, they're enrolled in school, they're entitled to participate. The kids that are on the hybrid model, on the days that they're not in person, there will be no busing. So all of these students will need to figure out a way to get to the school in order to practice on days that they're not physically at the school for instruction.
Okay, before we go to this vote, Matt, is there any way that we can come up with a compromise that you see that would include the middle school sports?
Pulling money from the budget? From the reserves? No. We decided we weren't going to pull money from the reserves at the last thing. I understand this was the last minute thing that we needed to make a decision, but I will not vote to pull money from reserves. I'm sorry.
If I may, I don't know how we can support extracurriculars when we don't even know if we can continually support our curricular activities.
Okay, you keep talking like this is extracurricular, but everybody also talks about educating the whole child, and the children get educated outside of the classroom. That's what the whole child approach is all about.
And also, can I point it out? I think that we really, going into this too, did a really good job about saving all those teacher positions. And we've just hired, and I didn't vote no against that, for the extra teachers and teacher assistants and so forth. So, I feel that we went into this year making sure that all that was taken care of, and that nobody was accessed or lost a job.
I just want to state, this discussion is talking about going into unassigned fund balance, and it's only September 8th. We haven't even gotten our audit report yet. This goes against all common sense.
Voting down a budget goes against all common sense, but it happens.
Yes, and we have to work with what the community wanted to do.
Everybody but 59 people wanted this.
Chris,
and 59 people who just didn't bother to show up to vote.
These are the cards that we were
Don't bash the public.
These were the cards that we were dealt. We have a certain budget, and this conversation right now goes beyond any common sense.
Not necessarily. Maybe yours, but not mine.
No, it does.
No.
This is leading toward cutting literacy programs for next year. Children have to know how to read and write and communicate correctly before anything else.
We're going against black marks on, if we don't have this, there'll be black marks on kids' college applications.
No, this is an unprecedented year. This is an unprecedented year for all students in the United States.
No, it's an unprecedented year for kids from Riverhead who are
I'm sorry.
Because other schools are going to have clubs. They're going to have sports. I'm watching high school football on TV. It's kids around the country are participating just like a regular year. It's just kids in Riverhead that are being shortchanged again.
Nassau's not playing yet.
I know
But they will be.
Maybe.
And their superintendent's the one who didn't show up for that vote or calling for it to be reinstated. It's
Okay.
we're going around in circles.
Yeah, we are. I don't think we,
This whole thing has been in circles.
I'm comfortable with this compromise, Virginia. Thank you for coming up with it.
That's the only thing that I'm comfortable with. And I understand Dr. Kokonas's points. I absolutely do. I guess I'm just more, and like I said, I'm not the type of person that would do this. You could, ask my family because I am very fiscally conservative, but I just care about the psyche of our vulnerable population. And I've had a professional that spoke to me about this, somebody that you would not have thought was my own pulmonologist, and had said that he was concerned about children and not being active and the rate of suicides for teens. And I think that just kind of made me change my mind about a lot of it. And
I understand, but next year we may have.
And I do too. I look at money. I really do. I don't take it lightly. I don't take it lightly at all. And that's why I knew I couldn't go for all of it. I wish I could, but I couldn't. And this is what I'm comfortable with.
And Ms. Healy, what are you going to do next year when we don't have the money to fund these things and we have to take away teachers?
But you
don't know that.
You don't know that. Exactly. You don't know that. And I think it's 380,000. And, we see what money is left over, every year. We're very healthy fiscally. If we were not, I would not even thinking of doing this. And we have definitely put money towards our reserves to help put towards the state aid cuts. And this is not going into millions. It's not going to $500,000, nothing.
Is this the number we're working with?
So that's the number I'm comfortable with, and I'm hoping it's less, especially, like I said, we should not be spending money on new uniforms or anything else. It's bare bones.
So now what do we tell the children in the winter and fall when we can't, winter and spring, when we can't pay for their sports? What are we going to tell them?
Well, that we would hope that when we're looking at the audit and with Mr. Dorr is that maybe we could see what we could do there.
Yeah, this is just because we're under a time crunch for tomorrow. The winter, spring sports are not off the table by any means. And so this was just to get ahead of the deadline that we have tomorrow because of Section 11. That's why this conversation is happening.
So
otherwise we would have waited till next week.
So next week, if the auditor says that we don't have the funds and we're slowly going down this downward spiral, are we canceling fall sports?
Well,
no.
So we're going to go down the downward spiral.
I think if this vote passes and we make the commitment tomorrow, we're committed to the whole fall. I don't think we can go back once we commit to Section 11.
And I don't think this is going to put us into a downward spiral.
It's September 8th when we're already digging into the unassigned balance.
We did it 2 weeks ago when we put the purchasing agent back.
No, that was money. No, that was money.
That was money from the charter.
This is just it. This is not, there's no common sense whatsoever here.
Well, maybe to you. But to everybody who wrote us a letter and the students that wrote us a letter, it does have a lot of common sense to them.
I had more emails coming from sports parents that said, please keep the academics. Academics.
They didn't get to the board then.
That's what our taxpayers also said twice. I mean, how much more?
Okay.
Let's just vote.
So, Mr. Venator, just interestingly, there's only 6 of us here tonight.
Okay.
And from the conversation, it sounds like we might have a tie.
You need four votes to pass any motion.
So it would fail if
Yeah.
there's,
Without four trustees voting yes, the motion would fail.
okay. Well,
We're going with this number as the approximate number, correct?
Correct.
79,000.
could you restate the,
Yeah, maybe if you want, I'll restate it based upon what that number is. From what I can tell, the motion would be a motion to amend the budget in the amount of $379,657 to fund JV and varsity fall sports and high school clubs and music programs through utilization of the unassigned fund balance.
Can I have a motion? I just felt right all it down.
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
No.
Dr. Kukunis,
No.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
yes,
and myself is no. Motion fails. Okay, we go on to opportunity for board members. Ms. Zahowski, you got a committee?
yes, I just need to pull up my notes. So
Sure.
please give me a second.
Was there any other committees that met?
I don't
No.
believe so. The intergovernmental committee met on September 1st. Board members in attendance were Lori Downs, Chris Dorr, and myself. We discussed policy 1230, public participation at a board meeting. The committee suggests a new process for public comments regarding agenda items only for when we return to in-person meetings. Community member would write their name down, their town, agenda item, and the question or comments on a provided index card. This would be presented to the district clerk prior to the start of the meeting. The district clerk would read the questions aloud during the comments related to agenda item portion of the meeting. Community members who wish to comment during the public comments portion of the meeting would be able to address the board from the podium.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There's no other committees, right? So we're going to go on to board remarks, comments. Anybody?
I have a couple.
Go right ahead, Mr. Dorr.
Okay. First of all, from everything I've heard, the first, well, I guess we have 3 days of school have gone well. The kids seem happy and everything seems to be going smoothly. With that being said, it's sad to see classes with less than 5 kids in them. With that, we should have planned better, that there was that if we're allowing so many to go virtual, then the cohorts should have been maybe a 2 cohort and our kids would be in school 2 out of every 4 days instead of 2 out of every 6. On the elementary side, I have kindergarten parents that are coming to me saying, yes, the kids were happy, but they've gotten no work. They were sent home with a book from their first day and read it. There was no seesaw, there was no brain pop, there was no contact, and the teachers are saying that they haven't been trained. That is upsetting. And aside, I saw a kindergarten and first grader get on a bus, and I know we have to have bus drivers wearing masks. This bus driver was wearing masks, dark glasses, and a hat. very intimidating for a kindergartner and a first grader to come on a bus. They don't have a smiling face. And I understand it's the times they have to wear masks, but it is just a little intimidating to a new kindergartner. And with that, I feel like I've been punched in the gut for the second time by the town of Riverhead. When the budget failed, I felt like I was punched in the gut. Tonight, when we told all these kids that they cannot participate in things that drive them, that bring them to school, is a second punch in the gut. I've never been so embarrassed to be from Riverhead or to call myself a blue wave as I have these last couple months. It's disgusting. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone else. Opportunity for RCFA. Ms. Lisa.
Thank you, Ms. Down. Okay, we have a statement from Board President, RCFA President. Good evening. We would like to welcome Matthew Verstraeten, Diana Lavina, and Tyler Lobenhofer to Riverhead Central School District. Education during the pandemic is quite an adjustment and less than ideal, but we are making do and evolving by the day. Although we would like to see our classes full, it was great to begin to interact with our students, even if it is only one cohort at a time. Even though at times the use of masks has been controversial, the RCFA has been and remains to be in full support of a strict mask policy, and the events of the past week show that we are fully justified in our position. Thank you, Gregory Wallace, RCFA President.
Thank you. Okay, opportunity for the public. Mr. Schneider, how many people do we have out there?
There are two people in the waiting room. I don't know if there were any other written comments, Ms. Tona.
Yes. Ms. Rayum, would you like to read the written comments?
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, we have 5 comments tonight. The first one is from Kristen Lennon from Manorville. In other districts and schools, they are allowing their students to remove their masks when they are seated at their desk and 6 feet apart. What is the reason that our students aren't able to do this? If they are 6 feet apart and seated, shouldn't they be allowed to remove their masks?
We do allow the students to take mask breaks every half hour on the elementary level and at the end of every period on the secondary level. The Department of Health actually, throughout this past weekend with the events, commended the fact that we do have everyone wearing masks for the greater portion of the day, because even with the 6 feet of distance, that keeps everyone as safe as possible, because the particles are not, it's less likely for them to be through the air that everyone's breathing. So we're going to continue with masks. We do feel that is the safest protocol at this time.
Okay, the second question is also from Kristen Lennon from Manorville. In speaking with many parents, there seems to be a very low numbers in grades 7 through 12 classes. Some classes have 3, 4, 5, or 6 in a class. Many students have gone fully virtual, and many have left the district for various reasons. Will you consider going from 3 to 2 cohorts?
That question came up a little while ago as well, that point that we do have a lot of students, especially at the high school level, in full virtual. And we can definitely go back and look and see if there's a way that we can make an adjustment back to 2 cohorts. The one concern that we have is that going to 2 cohorts where students would be able to attend every other day, some of the families that have their students in full virtual will want to return to that hybrid model. And we'd have to make sure that we don't overpopulate any of the classes, because we have to keep the social distancing of 6 feet between the desks. And that's about 13 or 14 desks in a classroom, depending on the size of the classroom. So in the next week or so, we are going to take a look at where we are with enrollment. It may require a survey on the secondary level to see what people's intentions are before we make a final decision, because we don't want to pull back and go to 2 cohorts and then realize that we just don't have enough space for 2 cohorts. But it's definitely something we'll look at. And if we can make it work and have commitments from families that they're not going to look to return to the hybrid model, we'll do what we can to do that.
Okay. The next question is from Jane Netwich from Aquabog. Good evening. Our son is in 7th grade and had his first day of in-person instruction at the middle school. My husband and I would like to thank Dr. Hudson, the teachers, and the entire staff at the middle school for helping to make his first day back a wonderful experience. We know from personal experience that this isn't an easy task, and we would like you to know that we appreciate how smooth of a transition this was. It was a different first day of school, but when our son comes home excited, says he had a great day and can't wait to go back, that's what matters. Once again, thank you to all his teachers, guidance counselors, the staff, and Dr. Hudson.
That was really nice.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay, the next one is from Susan from Aquabog. If one cohort and teacher are quarantined, what happens with the students in the other cohort with the same teacher? Are they home on remote learning, or are they in person with a TA, substitute, etc.?
Yes, we received guidance from the Department of Health for that very issue over the weekend, and the other cohort will be attending school on their in-person days, and we will have another teacher in the classroom with those students.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, the last comment, it looks like, is from Steve Legnina from Aquabog. It's quite lengthy, so bear with me. Thank you, Board of Education, for your decision to send a letter of opposition to the Riverhead Industrial Development Agency regarding the proposed tax abatement for the market value apartments on Main Street. Please know that I wrote the Town Council and Riverhead Industrial Development Agency Executive Director, Ms. Stark James, in opposition to this project. In fact, I called on a moratorium for all new tax abatements and construction of apartments in the town of Riverhead. I even went so far as to share data that I had researched with Riverhead Local. Unfortunately, they have yet to publish this information. These tax abatements over time can have a crippling effect on the school district. According to the performance of industrial development agencies in New York State reports issued by the New York State Comptroller, the net tax abatements in the town of Riverhead are staggering. In 2018, there were $3 million of net exemptions. 2017, $2.9 million of net exemptions. 2016, $2.4 million. 2015, 1.6. 2014, 1.9. 2013, 1.8 million. 2012, 1.5 million. 2011 and 2010, both 1.8 million. In 2009, $1.9 million of net exemption. This totals over $20.6 million of net exemptions in the last decade of New York State Comptroller reports. A substantial portion of this money would have been tax revenue for the school district, if not for the town of Riverhead Industrial Development Agency granting these tax abatements. Just a fraction of this money could have paid for all the sports, clubs, and music programs that were cut as a result of the failed budget. The last 3 or 4 Board of Education meetings focused on ways to come up with funding for these programs. One such potential way of funding these programs may be to challenge the legality of these pass-through tax abatements. The district may wish to consider asking their attorneys to investigate whether the pass-through tax abatements could be challenged in court, as these abatements have caused irreparable harm to the students of our community.
That's the last one?
The last one. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Schneider.
Okay, Ms. Downs, there are 2 people in the waiting room. Here comes the first one is Allison Matway.
Hi, Ms. Matway.
Says that it's connecting to audio. Mrs. Matway, are you there?
Yes,
Go ahead, Mrs. Matway. How are you tonight?
I am well. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I never have the intention of speaking at the board meetings, but I feel like after seeing what I just saw, I felt that I needed to make a comment. I think that over the last several weeks, Mr. Doerr's behavior has been a little bit unbecoming, a board trustee, talking about teen pregnancy and crime and using lots of scare tactics to vote down, to vote for these sports. And that was pretty upsetting to me. And tonight, him saying that he's not proud to be a Riverhead Wave and basically, bashing the town and the people and saying that it was 59 people who voted this down. But he forgets that there were over 2,100 people who voted against the budget. So it wasn't just 59 people, it was 59 more people than voted yes, but there were a lot of people who voted no. And so my statement needs to be, well, besides being a little bit offended, I think that Mr. Doerr needs to, and the rest of the board who was on there, I will exclude Mrs. Healy because she wasn't on the board when you guys put up the revote for the budget. No compromises were made by the board. And I emailed you ahead of that vote and suggested that you make some cuts or this budget would not pass. Being one of the 2,000 people who voted yes for this budget, I knew if you didn't make changes, it wouldn't pass. So I find and I hate to use the word arrogance, but it seems to me it was an arrogant decision to not make a cut to the budget and expect that it was going to pass the second time. So I think that Mr. Doerr and the other board members need to remember that people needed, in my mind, a sense of community and trust. And that was not shown when the exact same budget was put up again. And I think we need to remember that. So I just wanted to make that comment. And, I don't know Mr. Doerr's.
Mike? No compromises. Join the meeting.
Who's that?
Can you still hear me or?
I still got you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just really wanted to make that comment, and I am still reeling a little bit from Mr. Doerr's comment about the made-up virus. And back then, I felt like him saying that made me concerned about how he would help be on a board that would help keep our children safe when he feels that it's a made-up virus. And all these statements lately have really had me I've lost faith in his ability to serve on this Board of Education. And that really makes me sad because I had hoped that everybody would do the right thing and behave appropriately. So I just really wanted to say that.
I'm sorry you feel that way. Thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Next.
Okay, the next person is Leah Petrignani.
Is triggered not? Oh, I can't say it.
It says connecting to audio. Hold on just a moment.
Okay. You there yet?
Not yet. I can put her back in the waiting room if you like.
Is there anybody else there?
There's one other person who just has a phone number. So let me just see if I can change all right. Here comes the next caller. I'm going to change their number right away here.
Hello? Caller?
Yeah.
Yes, could we have your name and town, please?
Yes. My own last name is Carver, and I live in Riverhead.
Go ahead with your question.
Okay, am I live?
Yes, you are, sir.
How many? Carver.
You're breaking up, Mr.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll move. Okay, yes, I apologize. Sorry I had to call and I couldn't log in through the website. My name is Mike Carver. An educator of 26 years, going on 27 now, also a coach of 27 years. Just very disheartened by the decision of our town, first of all, by not supporting our budget. The question I have is, I guess, would be for Mr. Schneider about the coaching salaries from last year in the spring due to the sports not running. And I'm just wondering how much money the district saved by not, were those coaches paid? If they were not paid, how much salary and where did that money go?
So the coaches were paid in a prorated capacity. The Board of Education had approved a prorated schedule based on the amount of work that each individual coach did. The money that was left over that was not paid to the coaches ended up as money that was left over at the end of the year, which then either goes towards reserves or towards making the appropriated fund balance.
Okay, do we have that number?
Well, as we've said before, the audit committee is set to meet with the auditor, the external auditor, on the 16th of September, and that's when she's going to have the audited financial statements ready for the audit committee's review. Until that happens, I would defer to her and that meeting.
Okay, great. That's going to be at the next board meeting?
No, it's going to be an audit committee meeting on the 16th of September.
Okay, thank you. And that's not open to the public, correct?
No, and then there'll be a report. The general pattern in the past has been one of the audit committee members will make a report to his or her colleagues on the board following that meeting.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Carver.
Okay, we'll go back to Leah Petrignani again, Mrs. Downs.
Sure.
Okay.
You there yet? I can't wait to go live. You connected yet, Leah?
Doesn't seem to be connecting, Mrs. Downs.
Ms. Downs, could I just ask a question? Oh, is someone there?
Yeah, I think it's connected now. Sorry to interrupt. Mrs. Petrignani, are you on?
I am. Hi, how is everyone this evening?
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. I just wanted to say my daughter is full virtual, and I wanted to give the district a compliment. So far, it is going phenomenally.
Thank you.
Yes, she has a fantastic teacher assigned. She's in the 2nd grade. So I want to say her teachers really hit the ground running. It's wonderful to see my daughter's engaged, which is fantastic. My only concern is that today when I had called my home school, she's assigned a teacher from another elementary school. When I had called my home school, the clerk in the office said that they were still working on the rosters. So I just want to make sure that the children that are currently assigned to full virtual classrooms will not be getting changed classrooms if there's an influx of students wanting virtual with what's reported was going on in elementary earlier last week.
It's not our intention to move people around. We may add students if there's room in classrooms, but not take students away.
Okay, thank you. That relieves some mommy anxiety that we've had going on today.
We're trying to keep consistency as best as we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. She got very lucky with an excellent teacher. So we're very pleased with the way it's going. Yes, I know that. We've had nothing but great teachers. So I'm very happy with the way this is working out so far.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Petrinati.
Yes, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Ms. Tona. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. You too. And I'm glad everything's working out for you.
Yeah, it's working out so far, so good.
That's
Thank you, guys.
fantastic.
Have a good
Take care.
evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Yes, Therese.
Hi. So I just wanted to ask a question or comment on the comments that I don't remember who talked about the abatements. Is there any way that we could invite the town attorney to a meeting to discuss what actually happens with that? Because I think some of the numbers, I don't know. I haven't fact checked anything, but I just was curious. They were quite substantial. And if there is truth or fact to what she discovered, maybe that would help us understand what's happening.
Therese, the IDA, the town attorney has nothing to do with the IDA. The IDA has their own attorney. The IDA works independently from the town board. They give abatements, and
Who is the IDA attorney? I'm sorry. Do you know who the
judge? It's Ehlers. Ehlers is the IDA's attorney. Now, what happens is the town board, they pick the people to be on the board. There's only one paid person, and that's Ms. Stark James, and everyone else is volunteers, and they have their own rules, regulations, and stuff like that. Anything you could add to this, Mr. Venator?
No, I think you've hit it all correctly. The town attorney is separate apart from the IDA. They're separate entities. It's a separate board. In response to trustee's question, we could get some more information in terms of if you want to be able to validate the numbers that were provided by that community member who spoke. We could try to get some of those numbers and ask the IDA to produce that. I'm not sure if they would respond, but we could attempt to get some of that information.
Mr. Schneider, you go back to 2011. Is there a way that you could pull up the numbers that you know, or if you can get a hold of Ms. Tannenberg?
Yeah, I have a schedule of values of the abatements that the IDA grants each year. And that's certainly something that you could do. The other suggestion I would make is that perhaps the Intergovernmental Committee, if it wanted to, could meet with Ms. Stark James and Mr. Ehlers to talk about that. I know we have met with them on an administrative level in the past to go through, several questions we had. So that's up to you. I'm sure we could arrange that if you wanted.
We have met with them a few years back, and it's like talking to a wall. They don't get it.
I can certainly provide the schedule of abatements to Ms. Tona to give to you on your update on Friday. It was also just harken back. I put it in the budget presentation. I know going back last year, it was in there, but I'm happy to provide a historical schedule of values for as far back as my records reliably go.
Yeah, maybe that'll help, Ms. Zahowski.
Is that something that we'd be able to share public information?
Yeah, it's public.
Okay.
What I have is the listing of the pilot payments that we're entitled to receive. What the IDA would tell you is that the property owner, again, I'm speaking in what they've told me. I'm not taking a position on this. The property owner continues to pay property taxes on the unimproved value of the land or whatever's there. And then they pay a sliding scale of the improved value of the land plus a pilot payment. So I have a schedule what the pilot payments are, which I'm happy to provide to the board, and you can distribute in the public as much as you like.
The pilot payment, Ms. Zahowski, is a reduced payment. It it's like a piece of property that might be like $50,000, let's say, right? We might get maybe 5,000 out of that if we're lucky. It's a reduced tax because they're giving tax breaks to the property owner.
Right.
And the school automatically is in there. And I don't know why.
And I'm just asking this question, is there a way that we could work with the IDA that maybe the school could benefit, the school district could benefit, therefore the taxpayers would benefit and the students and everyone involved would benefit if somehow those given the tax breaks?
Ms. Zahowski, we have tried to work with them numerous years. I tried from the outside. We had a board member, Angela DeVito, who as a board member, a school board member, was on the IDA, and she couldn't change their minds. They have their rules, their regulations, and their policies.
What was it that she was trying to accomplish?
Exactly what you're asking.
Oh, to give the school some benefit?
Exactly. And
okay.
I worked on it from the outside, and then when I got on the board, we had board members go, and it's just keep writing letters. Keep writing letters, or we could ask our attorney to show up at all their hearings and speak for us.
And what was their reasoning that they weren't willing to cooperate or help benefit
because
the school?
It's part of their policy and stuff. Chris, can you help here?
Yeah, I mean, the reason they exist, the reason an IDA exists is to provide a mechanism to entice business people to remain in the community, and the feeling, and then they have a charter and they have a plan that they follow. And their plan is to encourage business in the town of Riverhead. And if it means that they have to provide some relief in the form of taxation over a small period of time, 10, 20 years. And if they feel that that's necessary in order to attract someone or to keep someone from leaving Riverhead, that's part of why they're in existence. So they view it as this is part of their mission. It's part of their mission to encourage businesses in the town of Riverhead to retain those businesses. And that's how they look at it. They look at it as that's why they're in existence, to make these decisions. And periodically we do send letters to IDA. We did recently opposing a particular proposal. So periodically we do that. I don't know how much they listen to us. But certainly to the extent that, people in the community, if they feel strongly that that mission, is at the point, given the current financial situation that it needs to be, looked at, people in the community have a right to attend their meetings and to voice their displeasure. And if enough people do that, that may have an impact.
And that's why we asked when that gentleman came a couple of weeks ago, that's why we actually asked the public to help us and write letters. And we've seen some came to us showing that they sent. We just had this last resident say that they sent one. I mean, and we sent one, you see that. And I want to continue. The only thing that I want to ask is, Mr. Schneider, when you get that saying that there's a hearing, we usually get that like 2 days before the hearing. Is there a way that it can get to us faster?
I believe that the superintendent secretary informs you, Mrs. Downs, as soon as the letter arrives. I can check with him tomorrow to make sure, but we get notified.
It's usually dated. The letter is usually dated like 3 weeks before. Unless there's
like 2 days before the meeting. That was when it
so
came.
they're mailing it, they're writing it, but they're not mailing it so we have enough time. All right. We have one more in the waiting room.
Yes. Would you like me to admit that person now?
Please.
Hello, Are you on?
I am on.
Go right ahead, caller. Your name and please.
Hi, my name is Brett Engman. I have a comment and then a concern I'd like to speak to the superintendent about.
Sure, go ahead.
My first comment is I'd like to throw my support to Mr. Dorr, Ms. Suhosky, and Mrs. Healy, who are the only ones that seem to realize what they're voting for. As someone who runs youth sports programs all over Suffolk County, I think the rest of the board is voting on something they're not educated about. One of the board members said that, you know, if we're not going to have middle school, I'm not going to have varsity. That absolutely makes zero sense. If a kid is playing middle school sports and is a true athlete, at that age, he is playing somewhere else. When you get to the varsity level of sports, those opportunities go away because there's no leagues for varsity players outside of school because they're playing varsity sports. So to say not having middle school sports, you could easily eliminate middle school sports and still have JV and varsity sports. It makes no sense to say you have to have middle school sports. That's my first comment. And I'd like to thank the members who are voting yes for it because they seem to have a little education. You shouldn't be voting on things you're not educated about. Second, my question to the superintendent. I had brought up an issue earlier where my three students were told to bring their personal laptops to school to do their classwork. I emailed Mrs. Tona and she rectified the situation by telling the teachers that is not to happen. To ask somebody to bring in $4,500 worth of electronics to a school to do his classwork, to me, is ridiculous. That's my money. If you want them to have a computer, the school should be paying for it. She rectified that situation. My other thing that occurred is my son, who is in AP classes, and my neighbor's kid, who is in AP classes, they're in separate cohorts, so they have separate teachers at separate times. Were both told when they went to class for one day, when they walked into the classroom, the AP teacher, who is supposed to be the cream of the crop of the teachers that you have, told them, log on to your phone to Google Classroom and do your assignment. There was no teaching, there was no lesson, there was no nothing. You would think an AP teacher with 3 kids in their classroom that are there that want to learn would be excited to teach them. Why are they giving them the Google Classroom assignments in school? That's what the kids that are home are supposed to be doing. There's no teaching going on in an AP class. I don't know. Can you please explain to me why that occurred?
Mr. Engman, I'm going to ask Mr. O'Hara, the high school principal, to give you a call tomorrow because he's best to respond to your concerns. I understand what they are, but I suggest that you speak to the high school principal first, or at least even the teacher first. And perhaps the teacher can give you a rationale there, but I will be in contact with Mr. O'Hara and he'll be in touch with you tomorrow morning.
To me, that's completely unacceptable. Part of the reason to go to school during this time is to get the kids away from the computers and to get them into class and get them talking and get them socializing. And you're having them on their phone doing the classwork? I don't understand.
Again, I appreciate you bringing the concern to my attention, but I will have to defer to Mr. O'Hara. He would be able to get you more details and speak to the matter better than I can at this point in time.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, before anybody else out there?
No, that's it.
Okay, before we end, I just want to say something that I missed before, and it definitely needs to be said. Tonight, we approved the retirement of Jimmy Dean. James Dean has been working with the district since July 1st, 1980. He's been a dedicated employee for 41 years. Jimmy has taken so much pride in his work, and I know Jimmy. Jimmy he bleeds blue. Put it that way. It's been a pleasure. Everyone likes working with him, and Pulaski Street and his co-workers and the staff over there. He's going to be greatly missed. I applaud Mr. Dean for all his years of dedication to this district. And with that said, can I have a motion to close?
Motion.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Ms. Haley,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Everyone stay safe. Good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.